assume that everyone can see my screen. Yeah. So, all right, welcome to my talk. It is rather overwhelming and alarming that 100 people decided to spend their Saturday evening here with me, and I hope that I will do your time justice now. So tonight I'll be talking about a hot topic, right? ChatGPT, and I'll be approaching it from this point of view. Give me a second, yeah. Right, so the preamble is there already. Yeah, I have only one wife. She's not here with me tonight. She has a family commitment to attend to. And yeah, and because this is recorded, I feel compelled that I must state the disclaimer. Right, you see a lot of things tonight. And whatever I share tonight, it is provided on a as is and as available basis. And if you were to use the chat engines or the chat application, then do exercise caution and do exercise your own judgment as to whether those applications are beneficial. Yeah. Also, because I'm a bank negara officer, I would like to make it clear that whatever I say tonight is in my own capacity and does not reflect in any way the position or understanding of the subject matter of my employers. Okay, now that we've gotten all the dready stuff out of the way, right? So this is tonight's presentation flow, right? So I wanted to give beyond a high-level understanding of what ChatGPT is. So I'll do my best to walk you guys through the technicalities behind how this chat AI bot actually works. And once we have briefly gone through that, then the presentation will then take a lighter turn, and I'll focus more on more demonstrative stuff, I would say. And then because this is a Christian event, I will then talk about how can ChatGPT actually be used for ministry work. And of course, like everything else, ChatGPT being a tool, it is a double-edged sword. And I would like to point out some of the pitfalls that may arise from the usage of ChatGPT. And then, like every good researcher out there, I would like to share a bit about what I know is currently happening. What is the future of ChatGPT? And then it will be stuff on resources that you can play with. And finally, to end the night on a high note, there'll be live demo of the tool that is being used. So that's the talk in a nutshell. Gentle reminder to the audience, I cannot see the chat box. So if you have questions there, we will address it at the end of my talk. Yeah, if it's something burning, please hold your horses. Eventually, I'll answer the question to the best of my ability. All right, so what is ChatGPT, right? If you have been using the internet, then I'm sure you have used search engines before. And ChatGPT is very much like a search engine, right? It will allow you to search for and consume information in a very practical way. Now, where it triumphs over the regular search engine is that it will actually present information in a way that is ready to use, right? You can ask ChatGPT on how to do a particular thing, and it will actually accomplish that for you, rather than showing you the instruction to achieve your goals. The other thing nice about ChatGPT is that it has a sense of context and memory. So it remembers what you have asked, and you are then given the agency to actually interact further to refine your question if you think that you are not happy with the outcome. It's a bit like having a conversation with a digital assistant or digital helper. For those of you who had a research assistant before, It's very much like having your personal RA who will go and perform or conduct research to accomplish a task that you have asked that person to do. So I thought of going to the horse's mouth, and I actually asked ChatGPT, what is ChatGPT, right? Who are you? And this is the answer given by ChatGPT. I'm not going to read off the screen. That's super boring. The GPT here stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. What does generative mean here? It means that it is able to generate bodies of text that has context in relation to the question or the query or the prompt, if you will, that is directed to the chatbot. Now, it is pre-trained. Now, what does pre-trained mean? Now, the body of knowledge represented or used to drive ChatGPT is trained on an existing corpus of words and knowledge, and that is the simplistic idea of it being pre-trained, right? Someone has taken the pain to actually refer to stuff like Wikipedia or other content available on the internet in order to come up with a reference point. And then you have Transformer, right? This is not the Autobot Decepticon Transformer that you guys grew up with. At least my generation grew up with. Yeah, so it is a specific description of a computer architecture, which I will try my best to distill in a couple of slides' time. ChatGPT is also many things. It is a large language model. Large meaning it is based on many billions of tokens of word. It is based primarily on the idea that language can be represented by words and words alone. And the model bit here is to suggest that it is used to represent that body of knowledge. And here, ChatGPT is unique in the sense that it tries to have a conversation with you. And this is the primary way of interacting with the ChatGPT engine. It can do many things, and I wouldn't go through what is written on screen, and we shall discover the things that it can do by itself. Right, so the attribution here is really given back to ChatGPT. So if you were to cite ChatGPT, I think a lot of academic journals have their convention on how to cite an AI bot if it had provided you with a useful reference or snippet of information. All right, we move on to the slightly technical bit, right? Please bear with me here. I thought that it's important to actually try and go beyond the surface and try to have a rudimentary understanding of what's happening behind the scenes, if you may, when you use the ChatGPT AI bot. Now, ChatGPT, right, is a brand name. It is an application, but the engine that is powering it is known as a large language model. So the large here, as I've mentioned earlier, indicate that it has been trained to represent huge quantities of text, right? And the billions of words and tokens. And what it does is it tries to find a relationship between words in the text that it has been trained with. Now, ways of doing this would include ideas such as next token prediction, right? So here, for next token prediction, it is a simple task. It's a fill in the blank exercise. Hannah is a. Now, in the body of text that the model has been trained on, you have multiple occurrences of Hannah is a, so something, right? So then the probability of something being returned is a known item. And the model will then try to return the word that is most likely to appear. So Hannah is a sister or whatever not. Now, in order to give further context, right, we also want to be able to figure out what are the words that appear in the middle of a grouping of text, right? So here, you get a simple example for mass language modeling. Jacob, mass, right? Mass means it is unknown to the machine. And then Jacob, what reading, right? So in this sense, again, the same scenario unfolds. Probabilistically, we will figure out, or rather the model will capture what is the word that is most likely to appear in place of the mass. Now, large language model, right, built on top of something known as a long short-term memory architecture, right? So LSTM actually tries to remember words that has occurred earlier in order to predict later words, right? And the problem with LSTM was that it has no or very little sense of the relative importance of words, right? So it treats all words equally. So in that sense, once it does that, the context of the word in terms of the subject matter or discussion on hand is rapidly lost, right? And LSTM also has a problem in the sense that it only remembers a short series of words. So if you had a lengthy article, for example, describing a natural phenomena, it may remember, I think, what was the length that was spoken of? I think maybe in the hundreds of tokens, right? So anything beyond that window, it will forget, and then that will impair its ability to represent knowledge properly. It's just like a person who has impaired short-term memory. You only remember words that were spoken in the last 2 seconds of your life, right? Anything beyond that, you just forget. So there's a medical condition for that, which I've forgotten, but that is quite analogous to what LSTM was able to do. So to combat this, right, the computer scientists came up with a transformer. Now the transformer, right, is able to look at all the input data at a time, not just a limited window. And it is able to give a different weightage as to the importance of the words relative to any single word in the language sequence using something known as a self-attention mechanism. So there we have it, right? So the chief takeaway, if you have dozed off by now, is that ChatGPT is powered by large language models, right? And transformers and self-attention are key terms in the nomenclature when you talk about chat AI. So I'd like to draw your attention to what's going on screen, right? So you see here a diagram that shows the evolution of language models, right? And their corresponding application. So if you look over here, right, ChatGPT is not something that is cutting edge. In fact, it came out in 2020. In 2020, it was at the beginning of the pandemic. So it came out there, and life as we knew it slowed to a crawl, and people were more worried about surviving COVID than they were about pushing the boundaries of knowledge. So it only came into its own this year or so, right? So GPT-3 here, right, is the name of the large language model powering ChatGPT. And only 3 years later, did the vision of ChatGPT appear. And this is this ChatGPT chatbot that we're talking about here today. It is based on technology that is 3 years old. Now, you might think that 3 years old is old or new, depends on your concept of time, but it's definitely not cutting edge, right? So today we are talking about this portion over here. If you see my mouse moving, there is a version 4 of GPT already, and there is simply an explosion of large language model that has been coming onto the scene, right? Things like Bard, Ernie, Llama, Chinchilla, and all that. All of these are names of large language models which are powering different variants of chatbots, if you like. So this brings us to the next portion here. So what is a transformer, right? So in a transformer, right, you have two main components, right? So here in this picture over here, you see a transformer being used to power a translation task. Je suis étudiant, right? My French is horrible, but the outcome is I am a student, right? So you have two parts here. An encoder, we essentially take in the input words, and the decoder at a very, very high level will then generate the output word. So both the encoder and decoder have their own multi-headed self-attention mechanism, which means that the words that are being put in, the weight of each of these words in relation to the entire corpus of knowledge is known, right? And at the encoder level, mass language modeling is also in place to give it a better sense of context. So we move on to self-attention mechanism, right? So if you remember just now, I said that the encoder and decoder both have a multi-headed self-attention mechanism. So what is self-attention mechanism? How are words represented as knowledge? Now, in computer science, everything needs to be numerical, right? So your token, your text being a word, a sentence, or a group of sentences is at a very high level converted into a numerical representation. So a token has three components to it. It can be a query, which is a numeric value. It can be a key, and it has a numeric value as well. So you have query, key, numeric. All these together represent a token. Now, in the self-attention mechanism, right, what happens is that the query and the key is evaluated and for each token, right? And the similarity between the query and key component of every token is calculated via a dot product, right? So dot product is the sum, is the calculation that you apply onto two vectors, right? So that is the vector definition, right? Now, the answer in step number 2, right, gives a weight, right? And that weight, right, is expressed as a probability that the query is related to a particular key. Now, that transformation from dot product operation is into a set of probability is done through something called a softmax operation. Now, the story doesn't end there, right? From number 3, you then need to elicit the relative importance of the token within a particular sequence, right? So je suis étudiant, right? So each one of these is the token. So how important is je suis or suis in this matter, in this example, in the entire sequence, right? That is given by step number 4 over here. Now, what happens is that you take the softmax operations output and then you multiply it, right, by the numeric vector, which is the third component of each token, right? And then this will then give you the relative importance of a particular token in the context of the sequence of the token. So this is what is done behind the scenes. And
Today
when
is
we talk
see
about
the evil deceptions that's going on, the world.
sorry, let me just continue from there, right? So the multi-head here, right, means that this mechanism, this whole series of calculation that is going on from step 1 to 4, this is done simultaneously for different combinations of query key and numeric value. So this is how what's going on, what's powering the transformation between Je suis étudiant into I am a student, right? Now, at this juncture, right, it is worth to take a pause and remember that as good as whatever you see going on over here, ChatGPT actually has limitations, including hallucination, right? So the generative effects of ChatGPT means that, or GPT-3 means that it can think of things that on paper make sense, but it's not grounded in reality, right? As an example, you might ask GPT-3 this question. What is the paper that Prof. Livingly has written that is most relevant to my research question, right? And then you will spit out an answer. Oh, the paper authored by Lee et al. Seems to be the paper that you're looking for. So very excitedly, you go and look for Lee et al. Whatever not. It looks plausible. It sounds like something that Living might have authored, but then you run it through all the databases. It does not exist, right? So there is a possibility that GPT-3 will hallucinate, right? The other thing is that at its current stage, it can be a bit unhelpful. It doesn't get the nuances of what you want to do. That's why you need multiple prompts in order to steer it in the right direction. And how it does things, right, is very hard to interpret, right? So what we would need to do is to look at the transformer architecture and then look at the value of the weights at each level of architecture, and then take those and then try to either visualize it or represent it in another form to find a sense of what's going on behind the scenes. Even then, computer scientists today are not very sure or don't have a conclusive answer on what a transformer does in a readily predictable way. And then finally, GPT-3, because it is based on human expression of words and knowledge, it carries all the biases and toxicity that is inherent in what we have been producing as a race, right? So these are the limitations which I will explore further. All right. So looking at the time, I'm going to speed up a bit, right? The technical explanation always takes a bit of time. So ChatGPT and transformers, right? So ChatGPT, interestingly enough, was built based on GPT-3. However, it's important to note that human feedback was used during the training period, right? So here, what happened is that you get all the data that was representative during the training phase, and then a policy or set of rules is supposedly elicited, right? So what are the rules governing this? What constitute acceptable knowledge within ChatGPT? So 40 people were involved, and here a prompt or question is asked, and then the answer is given. So what the person then does is that it tries to label the output from the best answer to the worst answer sequentially, right? Once that has been done by the 40 people over here, and they have a sense of what is correct, then this data is then pumped into a reinforcement learning model. So the reinforcement learning model basically does this. It penalizes the learning of wrong information, and it rewards the learning of correct information. So the initial seeding of knowledge done by the 40 human labelers were then used to as seed input through a reinforcement learning system, which then went through all the other possible combination in order to build up that representation of knowledge that is behind ChatGPT. Now, even at this very early stage where human intervention was necessary, you already begin to hear of the darker side of ChatGPT. Number one, the 40 people were paid peanuts to do the job, right? They were not paid a good sum of money. It was very minimal wage kind of thing. Number two, they were exposed to the worst possible stuff that you could imagine, right? Prompts that were toxic and nasty and whatever not. They had to view all of that and then sift through that. So these people went through quite a bit in order to bring ChatGPT up to the point where it is usable today. So, okay, I'm going to speak through this, the 11 practical use cases. I think it's much more appreciable when you see in a live demo. So what can we now do with ChatGPT? Right. It used to be, I was a former academician before I joined the bank, that students would come up to me and ask for guidance to write a resume when they wanted to leave uni and get a job. Now I can direct them to, just get ChatGPT to speed up the skeleton for them to do the same thing. So this prompt that you see on screen, right? These are all prompts that I've actually tried on my copy of ChatGPT. And on the right-hand side, you see the output, right? So, just by looking at this quickly, you can see that, all right, it does a pretty good job at writing a resume to be a youth pastor, right? And this was kind of surprising because I would think that a youth pastor job is not something that is readily or well represented in for most people or in the wider world, but it does the job anyway. It can also write jokes for you, right? So if you are the MC for events such as this and you're trying to be funny, right? You could get GPT to give you original material, right? So I tried a few prompts. It got a joke, whether or not it's funny to you or me is debatable, but still, it beats you searching for jokes or beats you writing your own material, unless you're naturally gifted. It can also explain complex topics. Now, this is a very useful concept, right? So you could have an X topic which is complicated, but then you want a simple answer, right? So explain X like I am what? You give an age range. So you can start with I'm 5, right? And here you see the Trinity being broken down into possibly a plausible explanation that a child can understand. And then you can bump it up to, let's say we have an older child, a teenager, right? You do the same thing and you get more context and more nuances. And right, your why here can be as high as you want. You can explain it to a person who's 50 years old and whatever not. You get different kind of answers. Now, ChatGPT can also be a maths tutor for you, right? So while it is not very good at maths by itself, right? If you later try and use ChatGPT as a rather expensive calculator, you'll find that it will make calculation error, right? However, it is able to tease out the steps needed to actually solve puzzle-like questions, right? So here you see the prompt, right? The prompt is what you type into the chat engine and you get the full-fledged solution over here. Confession, I did not go and run through the numbers myself. Someone can go and fact check me and see whether this makes sense or not, but this is what ChatGPT is able to do. Then ChatGPT can also give relationship advice. Now, at some point, it can be a life coach, it can be a mentor, or if I dare to suggest it, it may even take the place of a pastor, right? So this is the prompt. You're able to give ChatGPT a role to assume, right? you are a Christian pastor, ChatGPT, right? So now it is assuming the identity or the context that it needs to talk like a Christian pastor, right? Then you give your question, right? And this is exactly what I type in. And this is the solution that it gave, right? On paper, it looks pretty legit, except that maybe if you were to talk to a real life pastor, there would be some verses thrown in here and there, and perhaps an offer to pray for you, right? But you can get this kind of utility out of ChatGPT now. And for the musically challenged, ChatGPT can also be a creative muse or writing partner. It can write music, right? It can even suggest the arrangement, the beat, the melody, the tune, right? So you get something like this. Whether it makes sense or not, I am severely musically challenged, so I can't really make sense of this. But the words looks familiar, and it tells me to go and put a melody that is very Hillsong-like. And I suppose on a very prelim assessment, this might work, right? So ChatGPT can potentially replace your youth pastor, your music director, and might actually replace a lot of people in church. Now you think about it, yeah. Moving away from that pseudo joke, right? This is something that I use regularly, ChatGPT. In my line of work, I need to code, and ChatGPT actually does a pretty good job of not just writing code, but it does a good job of explaining what goes on in the code, and also it helps to interpret errors that occurs when you code. Having said that, my professional experience with this is that a lot of times it will not give you the right answer from the very beginning. It will give you something that looks feasible, but when you run it through your coding environment, you rapidly discover that due to its tendency to hallucinate and all that, it may take certain assumption that is not true of the situation they are in. So it will seed an idea, but you will need to fine-tune the solution as you go along. Okay. Also, ChatGPT is really it's able to do things in multiple language, right? It's a very polyglottic kind of application. So if you want, you can write a poem about subject matter in the voice of a particular person you like, right? William Blake, Tiger in the Night. If you are familiar with English poetry, you might know Mr. Blake. And you can say that, hey, I want to be a bit more muhibah. So, hey, I want it in Malay, English, Tamil, and Mandarin. And this is what I got out of this, right? Confession, I can only read the English and Malay bits. The Tamil script is beyond me. The Mandarin scripts beyond the simpler characters are also beyond me. So I don't know whether this actually makes sense or not. So those of you who are conversant in Tamil and Mandarin, do let me know whether this actually makes sense. ChatGPT is able to do this. Next thing, again, for younger people, ChatGPT can also help you prepare for an interview, right? So you can do many things, right? You can ask it to generate questions that would be asked by an interviewer in a particular field. You can ask it to give a plausible answer to plausible questions asked by an interviewer. You can even assign a role to the interviewer, saying, like, for example, ChatGPT, you are a sarcastic, bullying interviewer, right? You have this opinion about me, and here, I'm asking it to give me a convincing answer to that particular question in an assertive and confident way. You get this answer out here. Again, on surface, it looks like a plausible solution. And here, for the academicians in the room, this might be a nightmare scenario for you, but I guarantee you it is happening. Your student who yesterday cannot string two sentences in English properly without much coaching. After ChatGPT, they're able to write perfectly grammatically correct English with sound reasoning and all that. If you see a drastic improvement overnight, then I'm pretty sure they're using ChatGPT to do their homework, right? So yeah, you can do a lot of things. So I think one of the areas that is severely challenged by the usage of ChatGPT is really in the realm of education. As an educator, we need to ask hard questions of ourselves. Do we take the nuclear bomb approach and then completely ban ChatGPT, or do we try to work with ChatGPT in order to instruct our students better? Yeah, so that's something there. Then finally, for the lay person, ChatGPT can be a chat companion, right? You can have conversation with it where you express your feelings, and it is an attentive listener, and it tries to give you building kind of responses. Of course, anecdotally, we have heard of cases where people were putting in malicious prompts or typing in input that is phrased in a particular way to elicit negative comment. And there was an anecdotal story where someone actually decided to take their life because of the interaction with a ChatGPT like application. I don't have a reference for that, but it is something that popped on the internet. So I don't know if it actually happened, but the potential for it to occur is there. Okay, now coming into the next section, what can ChatGPT do for Christian ministry, right? There are many such things that can be done for ChatGPT, right? It can give creative ideas about order of worship, about specific prayers to be prayed. If you're a cell leader and church is not providing you with material fast enough, you can actually get personalized devotion material. It can be a frontliner for pastors. Some church have a Ask Me Anything kind of session where the pastor will briefly field any and every question from the congregation. So, a ChatGPT could actually stand in and deal with the easier to answer questions. It can help your back office as well, your administrators and all that. You can do stuff like newsletter, slides, articles, whatever not. And then it can generate social media content. If you want to publicize events like today, you could have asked ChatGPT to come out with a blurb to say what we're doing tonight. It can also be a good organizer, right? If you want to plan a 7-day itinerary in the Holy Land, I've seen it for myself. It can come out with a pretty good suggestion as to what to do for a Holy Land tour. And the big elephant in the room, it can write a good sermon for you, right? So whether, right, someone is laughing, whether that's acceptable to the leadership of the church or not, I don't really know. I did a quick search on the internet. There are already positional papers that saying that, this is not human. The Spirit of God is not involved in this. Then my next question is, can Spirit of God transcend our experience and be reflected in God is omnipresent, right? Can he not be omnipresent within the language model as well? So there's a lot of theological discussion that needs to be answered. Same thing like virtual reality and whatever not. But it is very possible to write a 3-point sermon at the click of a button. So whether that is good or not, those who say it's not good would take the position that there's very little of God involved in the process. There's no divine inspiration. You're leaving it up to whatever the engine decides is relevant to write your sermon. You may also lose a valuable skill. What happens if ChatGPT is turned off tomorrow? Would then our young pastors who have learned to depend solely on ChatGPT not be able to write a coherent sermon stuff like that. But other people will say, hey, now everybody can write a sermon, everybody can preach. You can send your young people to everywhere and they'll be able to preach on whatever subject matter it is. So again, tough things that we need to grapple with. And it can even do harder stuff, right? Defend of the faith, apologetics, contextualization, speaking out to people of our time, the atheists, people from different faith backgrounds, right? It can write messages about certain things that has been contextualized. It can write good, what appear good to me. I'm not a seminarian. It can write good apologetic kind of rebuttal for questions about our faith and theology. So yeah, definitely ChatGPT can be used for ministry. So how about the Christian scholars? Can we use ChatGPT for scholarism? Yes, definitely. It is helpful for all manner of things: literature review, text generation, including it will help you write academic papers, right? It can do data analysis. It can do translation. It can do paraphrasing, right? Especially when you are dealing with a tricky situation with Turnitin and whatever not, it can help you paraphrase so that your message is clearer and less plagiarized, I would say. And I've seen people using it to power a question answering kind of system whereby it will answer question based on a particular text. Right. So how should we then think about ChatGPT at a deeper level, right? So I drew inspiration from Langford's work, right? Quite a new paper, right? You want to access it, is open access down there. And it talks about what are the lenses we can use or point of view that we can assume when we talk about AI, ChatGPT. It starts by talking about how God's nature is revelatory, right? He reveals himself to us. So as such, right, it's important to approach any technological discussion from God's point of view. It starts with God, it ends with God. Don't get seduced by the technology or the spirit of the times, if you will. Also the idea that God is a creator God, right? A good angle to look at tech and AI, right, is to recognize that it is, no matter how sexy or how good or how useful it is something that is created. It is not to be worshipped. It is, while it seems that it is generative, it can create, right? But we are able to understand the science of how it does that. Not 100%, but we have a good idea of how it does things. Also, there are creation care concern. It takes a lot of computing power and electricity to create the large language models. That's why they are finite. You're just using a lot of power and water for cooling and all that. So actually, large language models are not very good for the environment. And also remember that for any tech, it cannot save, right? Salvation belongs to God and Jesus alone, right? ChatGPT will not earn you your ticket to heaven. And finally, no pun intended, but finally on eschatology or last things, right? We have ChatGPT today. Are we now a step closer to the end times? My personal belief is every day we live on earth is a day closer to the end times, right? Hopefully Christ will not tarry much longer, right? But to say that ChatGPT is a sign or a herald for the end of times and all that, I think that's really stripping away the agency of God to do both salvation and also to come in judgment. So yeah, 4 angles for us to look at technology. And for a much deeper dive into this framework on AI, go and read up what Langford has mentioned, right? This is an actual paper, it's not something I type into ChatGPT and then it's suggested. So I've actually seen the paper myself. And because I am from a marketplace-orientated ministry, we have something called theology of work. On the left-hand side, you have all the ideas about work, and on the right-hand side, you have how this impacts our understanding of ChatGPT, right? So God is a worker himself, right? So when we try to look at ChatGPT, it must be based on God and His Word, not on technology, right? So men and women are born to work in partnership with God, right? Adam and Eve, God, garden, right? So yeah, we probably should be using ChatGPT in partnership with God to work as well. Why work is hard due to the fall, and ChatGPT is a product of a fallen world, so there is a great deal of fallenness about it. God will sustain His work, right? And and today with ChatGPT, tomorrow we might not have it, or there'll be a new incarnation of ChatGPT, but we have the assurance that God continues the work. And redemption of work, all right? We often talk about how work today can be a 12.
Accept that this is the new world order. Go accept that this is the new world order.
Sorry, I need to mute that. Yeah. Talk about the idea of redemption of work, right? From toil to blessing. How can ChatGPT actually be used to redeem work that is drudgery? Actually, can do a lot of things that is quite a drudgery in nature. And talking about idea of completion, right? How do we then have an idea of whether work will cease in heaven? I think that's not really addressed by the usage of ChatGPT. But I think if ChatGPT were to save us time, should not just be using it for leisure now. And you talk about the last 3 points, talking about biblical characters in the Bible and how they approach work. And we could draw inspiration from that as we look at ChatGPT as well. All right, pitfalls of ChatGPT, right? So it can and will give you the wrong answer. ChatGPT, depending on the information that was fed into it, can lead to misinformation. ChatGPT now is a paid product. So I pay $20 a month to use it, right? Not everybody can afford that. There are allegations for plagiarism. There are allegations that ChatGPT actually was built based on intellectual property of others, right? Elon Musk has said that it was built on Twitter. The people at Reddit is saying it was built on Reddit and all that. So there are nastier allegations that, hey, we've contributed inadvertently to the creation of ChatGPT, which is being monetized. So where's the fairness in that? Also, there's a concentration risk, right? ChatGPT is only offered by one company at the moment. There are competitors which make this less of a problem, but now if you want to talk about ChatGPT per se, right, it's only offered by one company. We talk about bias already, right? All the text in the world represents knowledge, and we live in a fallen world, so there will be bias for things like gender identity, ethnic kind of issues and consideration, patriarchal stuff, right? It's all there, it's all reflected in the body of knowledge that ChatGPT is built on. And ChatGPT in its current form is only up to 2021. So there's no further update to the information, which is troubling, right? I talk about creation care. It takes a lot of resources to build large language models. So that's why I don't see large language models going beyond the size that they are today, right? There is diminishing return. There is loss of privacy, right? You can use ChatGPT and Google up who is Peter Ho, right? It will give you an answer. Thankfully for me, there's a Taiwanese actor by the same name of Peter Ho. So a lot of times the material is reflective of him and not of me, which I'm very thankful for. It will lead to loss of jobs, right? If today you think about your PAs, your research assistants, and whether those who are doing very manual and tedious work, I think those jobs will just go away. Yeah. And it may be a crutch for basic learning, people will not learn how to string grammatically pleasing sentences. People will come to rely on ChatGPT to do even the most basic of things. And once you lose that, right, basic learning may be impacted, right? So knowledge may be honed in the area of writing prompts, but you may never have a literary genius on your hands ever again, because everything is done through ChatGPT. And ChatGPT, if it's used in the wrong way, can lead to information that can cause harm, right? So an example would be how to use what are SQL injection code. So I've seen BART actually. BART is Google's activation of ChatGPT. So it will volunteer SQL injection code, but with a disclaimer, right? Okay. So what's the future of ChatGPT, right? So very quickly, right? You have things like LangChain, right? So this is where you are able to upload your own material, and this material would be independent on the material that ChatGPT was used on. And this means that we can use it for proprietary work information and also more recent information. So this is LangChain, right? So it has multiple divergent paths in the form of chains, and you have a lot of agents that does all of this. Then the sexiest thing now is AutoGPT, right? AutoGPT is an automated ChatGPT. So all you need to do, right, is to give it a task, a goal here. And then this is the only prompt you write. And then it will very scarily, or it will very diligently, depending on which school of thought you hold to. It will then quickly figure out what to do and accomplish it with minimal intervention from yourself, right? So this looks great to me, right? It will free my time to do other stuff. But again, I think it will change the nature of work as we know it. So concluding thoughts, right? I'm very aware of the time. For the organizers, I suppose once we hit the 1 hour mark, the recording will have to stop. Will the meeting conclude? I'm not too sure. But anyway, this is my concluding thoughts. It is just a tool, can be used for good or evil. While it can lead to productivity boosts, but we're going to lose jobs along the way. There will be a digital divide between the have and have-nots due to technology like this. And the technology will only grow better in time. And there are a lot of ethical issues that need to be grappled with. And all of this needs a compelling Christian voice. If we are not out there stating our stand, then someone else would state their stand. And that is the race that we are in. Okay. Okay, resources. This slide will be shared with you all, right? So ChatGPT is not the only game in town. You have offering like Bing ChatGPT, right? It's free. Today, I found out that Google Bard is already available for use. All you need is just your Gmail account and you're good to go, and so on and so forth. There are many software out there, right? Some are demo. Once you have sorted out the amount of time that I've left, right? Bible GPT, right? Do not pay, stuff like that. Robo lawyer, robo doctor, robo busters, right? Things like that. And okay, right, I'm going to take a pause here and maybe just check with the organizers as to what I should be doing. Do I have time to take question or conduct the demo, right? Let me just stop sharing.
Peter, this is Indrani here. Yes, you can carry on until 9:05.
9:05, yeah.
9:05 is when I would know. 9:05 is when I'll give you the 5-minute warning. You finish at 9:10. Then there'll be questions.
Okay. Then let me just go and do my demo lah, right? Okay. Okay. Very quickly, let me just end my presentation here. I'll take your questions, I promise. Yeah, but let me just quickly do the demonstration. Okay, right. So here we go. Right. All right. So there is this app here, right, called Bible GPT. So someone actually did what we call a fine tune of ChatGPT based on either the World English Bible or the King James Version, right? So you can go and type that and volunteer an email, right? Like what I'm doing right now, and then is it okay to use pirated software when the original software is not available in my country? All right, let's just type something like this. All right, so you have an ethical dilemma here. So let's say, and it talks about stuff that I'm pretty sure the Bible has never mentioned about. All right, and let's just do an ask here. And we need to give it a bit of time because this is done by a single person. And yeah, here we go. So the answer is thou shalt not steal. Okay, pretty good, right? You're asking it about pirated software. So based on the body of knowledge of GPT-3, it knows that piracy is equivalent to stealing, and because it has been fine-tuned on the Bible, it then gives us all the reasons in the Bible that says that why you should not steal, right? So there you have it, right? This is ask me anything but using the Bible. All right, so that's demo number 1. I have 5 more minutes. Let me just pick and choose what I want to do. All right, paraphrase the Nicene Creed. All right, let's see what happens over here. Oh, okay, paraphrase. This is the interface for ChatGPT, right? Nicene, I can't really pronounce it properly, but all right, nothing went wrong. Never mind, let's just reload this. All right, paraphrase. Free for young Christian. All right, give it some context. All right, okay, all right. Yeah, this does. Okay, so here you notice that you get a paraphrased version for young Christian, but fundamentally it's still the same. One God, Jesus, the Holy and Apostolic Spirit, the Church, the forgiveness. So yeah, you could actually do things like that. 4 more minutes. How about this? I want to talk. Okay, maybe the last one. I want to talk to you about believing in Jesus. Right? Let's try this. It's pretty fun. Right. Okay. So okay. Let's say you have young people whom you want to send out to do street evangelism. Right. Okay. All right. I want to have a conversation with you concerning believing in Jesus. All right, let's see what it does. So what we would like to, it then begins to engage already. What I'd like to discuss, what do you know of Jesus? Right, and then okay, why should a person believe in Jesus, and so on and so forth, right? So it really walks a person through a pseudo conversation with another party about salvation and stuff like that, right? And then that brings us to 902. And maybe let me demonstrate one last thing, auto GTP, and then I'll take questions offline, I guess. All right, so this is the URL for auto GPT. And let me just load it up over here. Okay, right. So this is the agent, right? And okay, agent 7. All right. What is the goal? Right. Find me the cheapest place to have Maggi mee goreng in PJ. All right. You'll be thinking it's a waste of resource now, but I thought it's pretty fun. Right. Okay. So you just do this, and hopefully we'll finish this up. So it shows you what it's doing, right? It tries to find the online directories for a list of restaurants in PJ that serve Maggi mee goreng. It tries to find the price listing, right? It understands PJ to means Petaling Jaya and not whatever not. And then it still does this. Notice that I've not done anything else. I'm pretty hands off now. And yeah, all right. So here we go. So you have this place called restaurant roles in section 17. Now, again, I do not know whether there is a restaurant roles in section 17, but it offers me a solution, right? So this is the latest thing where people are talking about using this to automate even more work being done by GPT. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing here, and that brings me to 904. So Indrani, back to you. I'm happy to take questions in whatever form. Right? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. You managed to pack everything in. Yeah. Okay. We are now open for questions. Can you please identify yourself when you ask the questions? Thank you.
The chat box.
Maybe I kick off you want the first question. This is Kong here. All right. I just wonder, okay, ChatGPT is based on prior knowledge, right? Because it's got a time cutoff 2021. So to what extent, the responses are based on prior knowledge. So to what extent does it have the ability to create something original? So now you gave some, of course, from a literal perspective, it looks original, but is it built on something prior? So it's not really original per se.
Hi. Yes, I would agree with you that it is going to create something. It is generative, right? So understand the context of the prompt that you're asking. So of course, it has a built-in knowledge of how to do something. So there are two parts to this. Now, if you want real novelty from ChatGPT, I don't think it will give you that. Find a new way to split the atom, right? You're not going to get an original answer out of that. But if you ask it to do something that's a permutation of something that is known, I believe you try its best to give you that. So yes, it's based on all knowledge, but you're looking for pure novelty. I don't think ChatGPT is the tool that you want to use.
I'm relieved by that. I'm relieved by the answer because I'm just trying to find what space is there left for humanity in terms of creativity, right? If ChatGPT takes that role, then there's nothing much left for us in terms of originality, creativity. I mean, I believe God made us to be creative. So if a machine takes over the role, it's kind of like maybe superseding God's creation.
I mean, like if we talk about literature or the arts or anything that if that is more creative, that's never been done before, I think that is an area that humanity can still contribute. Yeah. New genres of comedy, new expression of humor, things that are not captured by words, right? Digital art. Okay, that's debatable. But yes, I don't think the agency to create has been taken by ChatGPT. And as knowledge continues to grow and improve, right, ChatGPT and its ilk will continue to learn. But I think there is always we are created by divine God, who is a creator himself. That the spark of inspiration is always there within us, right? And then machines will have not progressed to the point where they expect the same kind of creativity. At least not now. Yeah.
Okay. There's a question in the chat box. What legal issues will ChatGPT create?
Okay, what legal issues? Again, I want to tread carefully over here. I'm many things, but I'm not trained in the law, right? So I'm just going to give my opinion on the matter here. One would be inadvertent abuse of, or rather, inadvertent appropriation of intellectual property, right? So already I've mentioned situation where Elon Musk is threatening to take ChatGPT and that version that Microsoft is running, Bing Chat, I believe, to court, because they've illegally built their large language model based on Twitter data, which Elon owns. The people who contributed to Reddit are also saying that that data has been mined for content to represent knowledge. So they are threatening to sue anyone that has done that. To make this a bit more murky, in the UK, I believe there's a extension to the publication law whereby they said that computerized models that capture knowledge, right, is not liable it's not liable when it is used to based on published text, right? The very idea that you publish your text in open domain means that you've actually waived off your rights to that material, right? So the UK courts are rethinking that particular decision. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of legal issues, and also the governance of the knowledge. There are not a lot of knowledge out there that can be used for good and evil, right? Like how do I get away with murder, right? Could a plausible answer be given? I've not tried, right? So I think it will stop me. But I've seen also entire websites that's dedicated to writing prompts that try to circumvent all the safeguards that the large language models have in order to generate I would say evil content. Yeah. So you have people who are twisted enough to do that. So that opens up a lot of issues, I guess. Yeah. I just mentioned a few that comes to mind. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, you open the chat box. There's a couple of questions more.
All right. Okay, cool. Give me a second, yeah. All right, legal issues. Right. I've answered the ethical issues related to generative AI. Yeah, to answer Chin's question, please elaborate on the ethical issues related to generative AI. Well, number one, there's intellectual property. Number two is the consequence of the generated information. If it is wrong or misleading, then who is responsible for it, right? So, for example, okay, I'm not suggesting you do this, right? Do not ask ChatGPT to be your physician, right? No, should okay, I've lost weight, I'm eating well, my blood pressure on my Samsung watch is 120/80 for the last 6 months in a row. Can I stop my blood pressure medication? I don't know what ChatGPT will say. But if ChatGPT says that, hey, by all means, you've ticked off all the boxes, you look like you have recovered from high blood pressure, and then you go and do it, right? And then something happens. And who is liable for that piece of information? Who is liable for that course of action, right? So that's an ethical issue as well, right? You know, or something even darker, right? You get a depressive person who tries to use malicious prompt engineering to get ChatGPT to agree that, all right, he's in a terrible situation and that the only way out seems to be suicide. And if ChatGPT concurs with that, then again, who is responsible for that? Is it the company behind it? Is it the original person who advocates for agency for people with mental illness to end their life, or the supporters of euthanasia, or whatever not? So things like that may come out. So I would say, in summary, I would think that ethical considerations would be, one would be IP rights, intellectual property. Two would be who is at fault when any piece of technology causes harm, and others might be advocacy of action that is prejudicial based to a certain people group based on the content of information they was trained on, who is responsible for that. So if you do a deep dive into the issue, all these things will surface. Yep. All right, I think that was Chin. How do you think an evil person can use ChatGPT to deceive or mislead Christians? Well, this sounds a question that you can pose to ChatGPT. I'm not sure if I am comfortable enough to offer an idea. Not sure if this is the right platform to do this, but I think Moses, you've exhibited exactly the kind of behavior that a person would know, a person with intent. I'm sure it's not you here. This is not your intent per se, but a person who has intent, right, to cause harm using ChatGPT could always pose questions like this, or look at how prompt engineering is done, right? Like just now, I gave you example. You are a Christian pastor. You are a something. I give you consent, right? So there is a very deep and dark rabbit hole that you can go into if you want to, on how to do what we call prompt engineering poisoning in order to get ChatGPT to behave in a way that escapes the safeguards or boundaries of good behavior that it comes prepared with. Yeah, so if someone goes down that road, then there'll be all manners of ways in which you can cause harm, not just to deceive Christians, but potentially more malicious stuff. But I don't think I want to discuss how those things can be done. Not here. Winnie, I read about ChatGPT being banned in some countries. That country will be Italy. Yes, you are right. What is your opinion on that? I did not do a deep dive into that decision, so I can't comment too much. But as a very pragmatic person, I'm glad that is not the case for Malaysia. I still think that there is more good than harm that would arise from properly governed usage of ChatGPT. Also, the exercise of common sense is important in all these things. Right. The next one.
Peter, before you go to the next one, I just want to go back to the question about ChatGPT being used to deceive and mislead Christians, right? So now the perception is that ChatGPT is largely unbiased, is based on an algorithm and a learning process that's really set and is not biased based on statistical weightages and all that. Is it possible at some point in time that somebody can drop something in that makes it biased in terms of its weightages?
Actually, I have a contrary opinion on the issue of biasness, right? Now the bias that it exhibits, right? You're right. It is based on the statistical properties of the text that it has been fed with. So if my argument would be, if it has been fed with text that is inherently biased, then that bias will be exhibited statistically as well. Of course, ChatGPT has tried to remove those bias through that step with the 40 odd people, right? But there's always something called fine tuning, whereby you take the model that it is running on, the large language model, and then you fine tune it on text that gives it additional context, right? So essentially, it will relearn weights in a sense. So I could find the Gospel of Peter Ho, and I could then apply it to GPT-3, and in that Gospel of Peter Ho, I can say anything I want, right? Then it will pick up heresy and whatever not. And if someone builds an application that is based on that amended large language model, then yes, that will be one way of spreading heresy. Yeah, so I think that's why it's only prudent that we understand the technology to see how things are done beyond the surface level to prevent this kind of things.
Yeah. I raised this point because in the early days of the social media, I work very hard to discourage people from posting stuff that is not relevant in church groups and all that. And one of the common response I usually get is, yeah, I got it from the internet, and so by implication that must be true, But of course, I think people have gone past that now, and people are more savvy that not everything from the internet is true. But now maybe we face a similar situation with ChatGPT. So some of church members come back and say, oh yeah, ChatGPT gave this response, so therefore it must be true, So I guess we need to develop a certain level of savviness regards to the sort of responses we get from ChatGPT. But to be fair, I think from what I observed so far, and very limited, of course, I think the responses were fair. If it's something that it's not, clear, actually ChatGPT actually does give some indication that it's not clear on it, and it tells you that. But moving on in the future, we don't know, right? So again, the issue of biasness and issue of people's perception of, the accuracy and the power of ChatGPT could be a bearing on people's actions following the response from ChatGPT. Yeah.
I would agree with you. All right. I would say that I think everyone should exercise prudence, and because the technology has been proven repeatedly to have bias and the ability to hallucinate and the ability to spit out data that is not true, I would say that everyone should have a default stance that it is whatever ChatGPT is telling you needs to be cross-checked. Yeah. So yeah, don't take it as gospel truth, definitely. And apply your own due diligence with sufficient rigor to cross-check on whatever output that ChatGPT is giving you. Okay, let me just proceed to some other question. KWK asks whether can ChatGPT capture data that for impersonation purposes. You can definitely use it for doxing, right? which is to find out personal information about another party through information retrieval. Definitely that is possible. However, thankfully, due to its tendency to hallucinate, I've seen it on many occasions where it can give you a possible semblance of truth about a person, but it will rapidly incorporate other facets of information about a person that's linked to a person that has the same name or exists within the same circle, right? So as an example of this, right, I have collaborators, right, in the data science space. We more or less have the same kind of credentials and history because we came out about the same time. So sometimes the ChatGPT will get confused about who is whom, right? I definitely can tell when the biography published about me has factual errors, which has entries that are related to my friend, for example, right? So yes, I will agree that yes, just like everything that's out there, information is being captured. Yeah, probably can be used to impersonate stuff, but in Malaysia, at least, I take it for granted that our particulars are already compromised, so it doesn't really take too much. When ChatGPT
Compromised everywhere. Mine is.
Yeah, I would just assume that everyone in the room has the same problem, right? Another question from Diane. Yeah, now ChatGPT can auto-train itself. It's now coding programs that did not code into program. I have not delved. Definitely has a potential to be creative in terms of writing programs. I regularly give it prompts to solve specific technical problems, and it is able to give unique solutions. So yeah, I think this is expected behavior. It understands logic. It understands how to solve certain problems. So yeah, it will be able to write programs that has never been written by anyone before. Yeah, in fact, I think one recent development was when I think ChatGPT came up with its own language or set of words to communicate with each other. So AI programs are quite prone to doing this. English is not very efficient, right? One token needs to be compared with every other token in a 70 billion corpus. So that one, there's a lot of mathematical heavy lifting going on. So if you have less words in a new language, then probably that would be more efficient, right? ChatGPT would come to that conclusion sooner or later. Can ChatGPT pose a risk to businesses? Yes, definitely. So please use it with caution. Do not put proprietary information on the ChatGPT or any other chatbot. It will be used or stored for training purposes. Yeah, so don't. This way, things like LangChain and all that running on your own infrastructure, that will be the way to go, right? Anything confidential, top secret, you pump it into ChatGPT, you can assume that you are volunteering information. Yep.
Thank you, Peter. Perhaps we have a last question, a very short one.
Okay, sure. All right. Oh, there's a lot of questions. All right. Okay, let me. Okay. Okay, maybe this one. The call for the leaders of for leading members of society to AI labs to put a moratorium on development on AI until governance is put in place. I actually disagree. Yeah, I think that moratorium is an artificial construct, and that it will only hurt players who play by that particular call. To give context, now they are saying that this advancement in AI is getting out of hand. It's too fast. Governance and regulatory laws have not caught up with it. Can we all just call a timeout and not develop more tech? I think what will happen in real life is that those who adhere to this call will lose that 6 months. There will be always someone who will think that, no, I'm not going to stand still. I'm going to continue to work it. And technology being technology, whatever happens in the next 6 months, will be out there, regardless on whoever stops. And unless you have a worldwide government that is able to compel everyone to stop research, and I don't think we are there yet. Yeah. So personally, I'm a pragmatist. I like the development of tech. I think the agency on how to use it should remain in our hands. Yeah, and even more so for believers, right? We know our God. We know the right stance to take in regards to all this. All right, Indrani, I'm done here. That's my long-winded answer to the last question. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Peter. Right. There have been a lot of questions on the online, which ask whether there is a recording of this talk. Yes, there is. Please go to the Facebook page. Dr. Kong has shared the link in the chat. All right, go to the chat for the link to the Facebook page to get access to this evening's talk.